Have you ever given up on a story halfway through because you just didn't know how to keep it going? Yeah, me too. Let's talk about that. If you're new here, I'm Kieren. I'm a writer and freelance editor, and I love to help writers tell their stories and have fun doing it. But sometimes, I have to admit, it doesn't feel like all that much fun. Sometimes it feels like I had a story right there and it somehow all slipped through my fingers. This happens to me all the time, and I used to be really irritated by it, but now I tend to see it as almost a blessing. I know exactly how that'll sound, especially if it just happened to you, but bear with me for a minute and I'll tell you why. To me, the process of writing a story feels a little bit like the entire contents of a thrift shop are falling on my head, and I only have a tiny butterfly net with which to hopefully catch something valuable. Sometimes I catch a little jewel and I take it home and I look at it in the light and it's just as shiny as I thought it was going to be, and it instantly becomes a story. Sometimes an entire broken piano lands a foot behind me and I'm just grateful to still be alive, story or no story. And sometimes a tiny mechanism will bounce off the rim of my net before falling in and getting stuck. And I'll have to pick its arms and cogs and teeth out of the net where it's all caught. Then at home, in my writing room, when I have a chance to look at this mechanism, I realise it's really nice. And I can see how it's supposed to look when all of the bits go together properly. And I've got a general sense of how it might work. But when I try to put all those pieces together, there's just something impossible about it. There's some tool that I don't have access to, or some dexterity that my hands just don't have. And I still might sink hours into it, getting closer and closer, but eventually I always reach an impasse. So that shiny mechanism just goes up on a shelf, but I'm careful not to put it too far out of my eye line. I don't want to forget it, even though I'm not really sure why I'm holding on to it at all. Sorry, I'm interrupting my own video to tell you about my editing service. Whether you're working on short fiction or a full novel, I'd love to help you get the most out of it. I'll look at all the usual stuff like your spelling and grammar, but I'll also focus on how the story works, your dialogue, plot, pace and structure, everything basically. I'll annotate your work with notes in the margin, and then at the end I'll write up all my thoughts, including your strengths, areas to develop and what I recommend you focus on. It's all done over email unless you want to hop on a video call to talk about something, so it can fit into any schedule, and all my feedback is friendly, positive and most importantly actionable. There's no need to take my word for all this though. There's tons of testimonials on my website from writers I've worked with if you want to know what they thought directly. Links in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. Thanks for your patience. Back to the video. There are more trips to the thrift store as the months and the years pass. There are more clean catches, more cinematic dives out of the way of things that might crush me, and a few more trinkets. Different ones that I try to fix in different ways, and they often don't work. Then one day when it's raining outside or the thrift shop's closed to fix the hole in the ceiling that the piano left, I stay home. I look for something to do, and I come across that shiny mechanism that I put on the shelf with all its arms and its cogs and its wheels that I couldn't make sense of. I remember unpicking it all from my net, and I hold it up to the light, and weirdly, it doesn't really seem as complicated as it did before. I think I can tell just by looking at it and feeling the weight and the shape of it that it's something that I really ought to be able to fix. So I take it to my desk to give it another go. What's the worst that could happen? After all, the rain isn't stopping anytime soon. Might as well do something. Those cog parts though, I remember being puzzled by those, but I did see something in another mechanism not too long ago, and they worked a certain way, so I wonder if, it works the same. Those arms it has though, I remember those being really thin and really delicate, but I think with a pair of needle nose pliers I can just straighten those out. That seems to work. Now this thing's got teeth though, I remember, because I cut myself on another mechanism recently and it made me think about, but no, these are actually kind of blunt, not very sharp at all. And that's it. And when I sit back and I look at the mechanism, I realise there's a pocket watch ticking away in my hand. And I place it down in a display case this time, not just on a shelf. It takes pride of place next to some other things, some gems, some mechanisms. I pause at the shelf of mechanisms on the way back though, while the rain's still hammering against the window. I fixed the pocket watch now, but there's still plenty on that shelf, so maybe another day. What I'm saying with this heavy-handed and barely relevant analogy is that just because a story isn't working now doesn't mean it'll never work. It doesn't mean you're not the right writer for it, or it's out of your range, or it doesn't fit you. It just might not be the right time. But the thing is, leaving a story until later almost guarantees that you'll come back to it a better writer than you are now. So, frustrating as it may be, it's not always a bad thing. To make another point, if you'd never tried to write that complex story in the first place, then maybe you'd never have caught hold of that other one, that one that you keep thinking about. That might have never existed. Maybe that tool that you sharpened one time to try and fix a mechanism, perhaps it didn't work then, but it might work on the next thing. Whatever you do though, don't give up on those old stories, and don't be intimidated into inaction by your next complex one. Take a look at your shelves, dust things off, get some light on them. Maybe there's a pocket watch there somewhere. As always, thank you so much for watching, and happy writing.